Shocking truth, they laughed at her as a black woman mechanic until the engine roared at 3 a.m. The shadows danced across the streets of Springfield, cloaked in a veil of mystery. The clock struck 3, a time when the ordinary slipped away into the surreal. In the heart of the quiet town, one garage buzzed with a strange energy, flickering lights casting sharp angles that flickered against the rusty tools. A soft hum, was it a whisper or a warning? Stirred in the air, pulling the curious closer. Maya, with her powerful frame, was deep in the garage, surrounded by the scent of grease and gasoline. They had laughed at her. The whispers traveled through the air like smoke, snickered jokes about a woman, a black woman, being a mechanic. But little did they know the engine she cradled in her arms was no ordinary engine. It had a heart of its own, a history tangled in the fabric of a bygone era. Some said it was cursed. Others claimed it was blessed. With every turn of the wrench, she could almost hear the whispers of the past, a haunting melody calling her. Tonight, though, it felt different. It tingled under her fingers, vibrating with energy, like it held secrets just waiting to be unleashed. Torn between fear and fierce determination, she tightened her grip. But then came the blast, a surge of roaring metal that woke the town. In a split second, eyes widened and mouths dropped agape. Witnesses rushed outside, drawn by the crescendo. Was it a scream or an extraordinary symphony? Neighbors stumbled into the night in their pajamas, disbelief painted across their faces. What the hell was that? Someone cried out, the panic rising like a tide. She had done this. The laughter that mocked her turned into sharp intakes of breath. The engine roared into life like a beast awakened, astonishing everyone standing there, including herself. Her heart raced as she gazed at the glowing shadows around her. What had she unleashed? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Maya stood frozen as the noise echoed and echoed, an impossible rage pushing through the thin walls of doubt that had held her captive. The garage, once her sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. What secrets lurked within that growling engine? The townsfolk huddled together, their expressions a mixture of fear and awe. Were they witnessing a miracle or a curse? As the engine continued to thrum with life, Maya realized she was at a crossroads. She could embrace the chaos, or run from the truth that had broken free at 3 a.m. In that moment, everything changed. What had she awakened? Would they still laugh at her now? The urgency prickled at her skin. She needed answers, and fast. Maya's heart thundered in her chest, loud enough to drown out the roaring engine. She glanced at the crowd, their faces illuminated by the harsh light from the garage. Fear clung to them like a heavy fog, but beneath it, a spark of curiosity ignited. They wanted to know, she wanted to know, but the engine's growl evolved into something almost sentient. It vibrated through her bones, a voice echoing within her mind. Find me, it seemed to call, and the familiarity of its command unnerved her. She took a deep breath, pushing past the pressure in her throat, fighting the instinct to flee. Did you see that? A voice broke through the night, trembling with disbelief. That was incredible. Maya turned, finding her neighbor Tom, a mechanic himself, his face a mixture of admiration and confusion. What did you do? How did you make it come alive? Her fingers trembled as they still gripped the wrench, tightening reflexively. She had always been good with engines, but this was beyond comprehension. I don't know, she admitted, her voice a whisper barely carried by the night. A woman in the crowd pushed through, her eyes wide and wild. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the town gossip. That isn't just any engine, Maya. She shrieked, pointing as if the very source of her fear were alive. That's the old Thompson machine. They say it was cursed. You should have never touched it. The word struck Maya like a clench of ice. The curse that hovered over the Thompson family was almost folklore at this point. She remembered the stories she had heard as a child, tales of misfortune, lost fortunes, and the families who had vanished in the dead of night. Once again, the engine roared, cutting through the brisk air and silencing Mrs. Jenkins. Why now? Maya thought aloud, her brow furrowed. What had awakened in her garage at 3 a.m.? She took a step closer to the machine, drawn like a moth to a flame. Panic laced the crowd's murmurs, and she sensed that they were terrified of what they couldn't understand of her. With a final, determined breath, she leaned over the engine. The buzzing resonance pulsed within her, not just sound but a calling, a lure that wrapped around her instincts. What kind of power did it possess? In that moment, fear twisted with exhilaration. Back away! Someone yelled, breaking the tension. A man in a uniform pushed through the throng. Officer Harris. Everyone, step back. She doesn't know what she's dealing with. His tone was firm, but there was a tremor of uncertainty behind his bravado. Maya's heart sank. The police had no idea what they were looking at. A mixture of distrust and anticipation hung in the air. Do you think I'm scared of this? She shouted back, her voice firm. I'm not its jailer, I'm its master. But even she wasn't sure. As the engine roared louder, something began to shift in the air around them. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly. With her heart pounding like a war drum, Maya dared to reach deeper. What was that buried truth behind the ferocious growl? And what if it unleashed more than just sound? A sudden crash resounded from the shadows behind her, sending the crowd screaming. Instinctively, Maya swung around, ready to confront whatever was lurking there, but could she handle what was about to emerge? In that moment, when everything felt on the brink of explosion, she knew, the real nightmare was only just beginning. A figure stumbled out of the darkness, cloaked in shadow, and Maya gasped as her eyes adjusted. It was a boy from the neighborhood, Jimmy, no more than 16, but he appeared older, his face ghostly pale under the garage lights. His eyes were wide and wild, filled with untamed fear. Maya! He shouted, voice cracking as he took a step forward. You have to stop this. It's not safe. The crowd hummed with nerves, but a few gasps hushed the murmurs as everyone turned to him. What do you know about it? Officer Harris demanded, holding his position firm. You get back. But Jimmy didn't flinch. You don't understand. The engine is alive. It's been waiting for someone to wake it. His words hung in the air, a taut line of tension. The crowd shifted, unease rippling through them like waves, each person unwilling to believe, but unable to look away. Maya felt the rush of adrenaline mingle with confusion. What did he mean by alive? A machine can't be alive, Tom argued, his voice faltering. But he looked at Maya, searching for answers. Can it? She asked, barely above a whisper. The engine behind her roared again, vibrating through the air and sending a chill racing down her spine. This time, however, it almost felt sentient, as if it were answering her question yes. Maya's insides twisted in a mix of dread and determination. She had touched it, had felt its power seep into her skin. The connection was undeniable. I need to understand, she said, her voice more resolute than before. I have to know what it wants. No, you don't, Jimmy begged, stepping closer, his hands trembling. The last person who touched it before he could finish, the engine's growl erupted, a thundering roar that silenced the air. Maya's heart pounded in response, the call to action reverberating through her very core. Stop! Officer Harris barked, but as if the engine had sensed his command as an obstacle, it revved up even louder, drowning his voice out entirely. The ground shook beneath their feet. With wild eyes, people stumbled back, the fear in their bodies palpable, while a few intrigued souls leaned forward, compelled to see what would happen next. It was then that she noticed something unsettling, a flash of silver beneath the hood. Barely visible through the layers of rust and grime, something gleamed. Maya's instinct kicked in, she needed to see what lied within. Ignoring the chaos, she stepped closer. The noise intensified, almost pleading now, and without thinking, she pulled open the hood. A waft of hot air rushed out, surprising her as the crowd gasped collectively. Amidst the tangle of wires and metal, a small, shimmering object lay nestled. Her heart raced as she reached for it, recalling the tales of treasures hidden in machines. But the instant her fingers curled around the cool metal, the world around her cracked, lights flickered back on, but shadows deepened, swirling ominously. What did I just unleash? She thought, her breath coming in frantic gasps. Maya looked back at Jimmy, who was staring wide-eyed at her, his expression shifting from fear to something far more grave. "You don't know what you've done," he whispered, dread lacing his voice, and that's when a sharp blast of wind howled through the crowd, lifting hair and clothes. The air thickened with something unholy, an energy so fierce, Maya couldn't help but shudder. Now more than ever, she understood, she had tapped into something far greater than her own skill. The line between torment and power blurred, and she knew this was a threshold not to be crossed lightly. As the crowd stepped back, fear gripping their hearts, Maya's vision sharpened. This was only the beginning of a sinister game, a cruel dance with fate. What exactly did that engine want from her? And was she strong enough to face the truth that lurked beneath its roar? The questions loomed with weight heavier than ever, promising that the nightmare was far from over. The crowd shrank back, yet Maya felt an electric pull towards the engine. The shimmering object clutched in her palm pulsated with a strange warmth, as if it were alive. Panic bubbled just beneath the surface, but there was something magnetic about the power coursing through her. "What did you find?" Tom's voice cut through the chaos, a mix of fear and curiosity tinging his tone. I don't know." Her words spilled out, but a part of her felt drawn to reveal the truth. She turned the object over in her hand, its surface smooth and oddly comforting. The wind howled louder, almost a wailing cry, as shadows flickered with a life of their own. It was as if the very air surrounding them thickened, suffocating. Maya caught Jimmy's gaze again, he was shaking his head, his eyes wide with terror. "If you keep it, it will want something from you," he warned, voice trembling. At that moment, the engine let out another guttural roar, reverberating in her bones. Dread twisted in her stomach. What was it demanding? Maya took a step back, the object growing heavy in her hand. She thought of her father, his love for machines, his passion for fixing what others deemed broken. He had taught her that every engine carried a secret. But he had never mentioned anything about them being alive. "Guys, I think I can understand it," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Officer Harris was advancing again, his face flush with authority. "Give it back, Maya," he commanded, but the engine's roar drowned him out once more. Instinctively, Maya clenched her fist tighter around the object. In that moment, images flooded her mind, strange symbols and glowing lines, shifting like smoke and fire. She staggered, overwhelmed by the force of this energy. A flickering light danced in her vision, and she could hear a low hum, almost a whisper beckoning her. "Don't let it control you," Jimmy cried out, desperation etched in his features. The crowd trembled, shifting uneasily, tilting towards her as if she were the center of a storm. Each face twisted with worry or fascination. "It's too late to turn back," Maya thought, heart pounding as the feeling of inevitability washed over her. This wasn't just about the engine, this was about her life, her choices, and the power she had just unearthed. Suddenly, the light from the engine flared, illuminating the darkened garage. In the glow, she saw shapes beginning to coalesce in the shadows, figures emerging from the night. Shuffling, they crept toward her, drawn by the sound of the engine's call. "No!" Officer Harris shouted, reaching for her. But the figures moved faster, shadows elongated significantly, casting a dark veil over the crowd. Maya's breath quickened. What were they? Ghosts of the broken machines? Spirits of those who had touched the engine before? The possibilities raced through her mind, each more horrifying than the last, and just like that, clarity hit her. She was at the center of a phenomenon she couldn't fully comprehend. She could either confront the truth or let it consume her. "Whatever you want from me, I want to let it take me." She screamed into the chaos, the shimmering object vibrating in response, but the wind picked up again, whipping around her like a cyclone, rattling her bones. The shadows swirled tighter, merging with the tempest, a cacophony of sound pouring from the prowling figures. Maya could feel the pulse of the engine synchronizing with her heart, urging her to act. A revelation was coming, a truth she would have to face, or risk losing everything she knew. As the crowd gasped once more, she locked eyes with Jimmy, deciphering his fear-laden expression. Whatever lay ahead would demand sacrifices she couldn't predict, and she was running out of time. What would happen if she failed to understand? Would the shadows take her too? The answer hovered, shrouded in the mystery of her own awakening. Could she harness the power, or was she destined to become a mere pawn of the very force she wished to control? The truth awaited in a storm of fear and determination, and Maya's journey was just beginning. The shadows loomed closer, their forms twisting and writhing with a life of their own. Maya fought the urge to flee, her heart racing as she gripped the glowing object tighter. It felt like the engine was breathing with her, alive and demanding. With every thump of her heart, the whispers grew louder, coiling around her. "Back away." Officer Harris's voice rang out, but it was nearly drowned out by the cacophony of shifting shadows. The figures inched toward her, grotesque yet fascinating. They weren't just phantoms, they were memories, fragments pulled from the depths of the garage's past, ghostly mechanics, lost souls bound to the very engine she had unearthed. Fear coursed through her veins, but also a flicker of understanding. This was what her father had warned her about. Then, a piercing scream broke through the air. A woman in the crowd fell to her knees, clutching her head, her face twisted in anguish. "The voices! They're calling to us!" Panic swept through the crowd, like a wave crashing into the shore. "Stand firm!" Maya shouted, her voice steadier than she felt. She felt an odd surge of energy from the object in her hand, urging her to take control of the situation. "If we lose ourselves to fear, they'll take what they want, our memories, our light." Jimmy pushed his way forward, desperation spurring him on. "Maya, this isn't your fight." "No," she replied, her eyes flaring with fierce determination. "It's too late for that. I have to know what it wants." The shadows seemed to pause, their restless movements stilled by her words. The air thickened, wrapping around her like a blanket. She closed her eyes and focused, the pulsing energy latching onto her like a leech. Images flashed before her mind, her father, tinkering beneath the hood of a car, his laughter echoing, nights spent in the garage, the scent of grease mingling with dreams. "I'll understand you," she whispered, pressing her palm against the glowing surface. Visions erupted violently. It was as if a dam had burst. Symbols, equations, and voices assailed her thoughts. She fought to make sense of the chaos, but waves of panic lapped at her heels. Then one figure stepped forth from the shadows, a flickering apparition of her father. His eyes burned brightly, filled with an urging intensity. "Maya. Don't let them take you. You are more than what they want." For a moment, the storm seemed to quiet. The urgency pulsed in her veins, mixing with her father's spirit. Taking a deep breath, she shouted, "I am Maya. I'm my own flesh and blood. You won't claim me." A shockwave erupted, driving out the shadows momentarily. Gasps echoed from the crowd as the figures reared back, hissing as the light from the engine exposed their forms, broken machines entangled in despair. but the struggle was far from over. Maya felt the shadows pushing against her barrier, trying to seep back through the cracks. The voices rose again, crescendoing to a deafening pitch, filling her ears with a foreboding chant. "Join us! Join us! Fight it, Maya!" Jimmy yelled, desperation lacing his voice again, as the flickering shadows began to form once more. As the shadows tightened their grip, their whispers began to change. "Power is yours, reclaim your future." Maya's breath hitched. She realized that instead of fearing the shadows, maybe she needed to embrace them. Could embracing the darkness lead to harnessing the light? "Are you ready to discover the truth that lurks in the chaos?" She called out, the vibration of the object in her palm resonating with her words. Black tendrils of fog encircled her like a living thing, almost pleading. They were not merely threats, they were a part of a story she had longed to understand. But understanding what? Just then, the ground shook beneath her feet, a tremor that sent waves through the crowd. The shadows loomed larger, beckoning her closer, closer still. Maya's resolve faltered for a heartbeat. Was it worth it? Would she truly harness this power or risk being consumed by it altogether? "Who are you?" she cried out, her voice cutting through the cacophony. The shadows' roar grew louder, ready to respond, and then, everything went dark. What had she just unleashed? Maya felt the darkness crash over her like a cold wave, swallowing every sliver of light. The weight of it pressed against her, heavy and suffocating, sending her thoughts spiraling. And just when she thought she had lost her chance to reclaim her own spirit, a flicker of warmth surged through her fingertips. The glowing object pulsed, a heartbeat beneath her grasp, beckoning her to remember why she had come. "Not yet," she gasped, pulling the energy close, like a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. The shadows recoiled momentarily, their jagged edges wavering. "Stand with me," she shouted into the abyss, her voice trembling but fierce. Around her, she could barely make out the faces of those who had come with her, fear written across their features, doubt flickering in their eyes. She could see Jimmy, his brow furrowed, and Officer Harris, jaw clenched, unsure of what to do next. The shadows shifted, swirling in response to her determination, each shimmery form reaching out with spectral hands. They seemed to murmur her name, a chorus of lost souls desperate for connection. "Maya, Maya, stop!" she cried, clutching the object tighter, its warmth now radiating through her entire being. "You want to take me." But the shadows surged forward, almost like they were testing her resolve. Tendrils shot out, wrapping around her arms, trying to pull her down into their depths. Maya felt fear once again claw at her heart, but within that fear, something deeper ignited a fire she hadn't expected from the darkness. "I was never afraid of my heritage or my craft," she roared, the energy gathering at her feet, sweeping up her legs, coursing through her body until she felt electric. Suddenly, the glow intensified, forcing the shadows back in a rush. "You want power?" she thundered, her voice strong and unyielding. "Then let us see how powerful you really are." With a fierce tug, she unleashed the energy, sending a wave that surged outward from her and collided with the shadows. The darkness shivered, a tremor of discontent rippling through as the energies clashed like thunder. "Join us. We will make you whole," they chanted, their sounds now warping into something that echoed with Maya's own frustrations, her drive to be seen, to be acknowledged as more than just a shadow herself. Whole? The word echoed in her mind, a bitter seed taking root. "I am already whole. I have fought to be more than just a mechanic's daughter." The figures staggered, their forms flickering and losing cohesion, whispering promises of power, but it felt like a trap. From somewhere deep within, an answer emerged, tangible and strong. "I will not be your vessel," she screamed, pushing against the shadows with strength she didn't know she had. That moment, the glow of the object exploded outward, and a shockwave rippled through the crowd. Nearby, a car's headlights flickered on, casting light around the scene, illuminating the fear and wonder on the faces of those who had gathered. And amidst the chaos, Maya saw her father's face, this time clear and resolute, nodding to her. But even as she channeled all her courage into that light, she felt the shadows shifting again, like water flowing underground, searching for an escape route, a way to pull her back into their grip. "What do you want?" Maya demanded, her heart racing as the ground trembled once more, but this time beneath the weight of something more menacing, a familiar engine sound, revving defiantly from the shadows, and with that, realization dawned. "You crave not revenge, but recognition," she whispered to herself as the whispers became demeaning laughter. In that confusion, the shadows began to weave themselves into a much darker form. "You're not worthy," they sneered. "You'll never be part of our legacy." The voices of the crowd crescendoed with panic, tearing through her focus. "We can't hold them back," cried Jimmy, desperation rising in his voice, but Maya stood firm, fighting against the encircling fog. Could she turn the tide before darkness claimed another generation? The roar intensified, propelling shadows toward her like a freight train. Maya felt her heart thudding in her chest, knowing she had moments to decide. This was no longer just a battle for survival, it was a fight for her legacy, for her family's name, for everything her father had poured his life into, and only then did Maya realize that within the chaos, the very engine she had ignited held another secret, waiting to be unearthed. Maya's hand tightened around the glowing object. She was on the edge of a revelation that could change everything. Would she descend into darkness or rise above it, wielding the power of her own truth? "Who are you?" she echoed back, daring the shadows to reveal themselves. Then the shadows shivered, and the engine roared one last time. What truth had she unleashed upon the world? The shadows hesitated, their ragged forms momentarily frozen as if Maya had slapped them. She could feel the pulse of the glowing object synchronizing with her racing heart as it illuminated the darkness like a lighthouse in a storm. But even this glimmer of hope was tinged with uncertainty. Each flickering light cast monstrous shapes on the surrounding walls, amplifying the fear that gripped the onlookers. "What are you?" she repeated, her voice no longer trembling but sharp, cutting through the murmur of distrust. "Something you can never be," the shadows hissed in unison, their tone mocking, filled with disdain. "You're nothing without us." "No." Maya shot back, her resolve hardening. "You don't own me, and you never will." Suddenly, the ground beneath her shuddered violently, as if reacting to her defiance. The whispers turned into a cacophony, a swirling tempest of accusations and threats, each wave crashing against her resolve. "You will bow. You will submit. You belong to the dark." Maya's gaze darted around, searching for something solid in this volatile sea of shadows. She caught Jimmy's terrified stare. He was practically trembling. Officer Harris's face had turned a pale shade of fear, as if he foresaw the inevitability of being consumed. Then she thought of her father, his wisdom echoing in her mind. "Remember who you are, Maya. You are your own strength." That thought ignited another burst of warmth surging through her hand, growing stronger with every heartbeat. The ground trembled again, sending a ripple of panic through the crowd. Yet amidst the turmoil, flickers of understanding lit up like distant stars in her mind. "You want me to fear you," she yelled, grappling for clarity and a way to redirect the haze of darkness swirling around her. "But all you give me is power." With a fierce roar, she thrust the glowing object towards the fray. A radiant arc exploded forth, illuminating the hidden faces of the shadows. Each one appeared contorted, not just by malice but by an echo of something deep-rooted, past anguish woven into their very essence. An unexpected empathy pierced through her fear. "You're trapped in your own pain," she shouted, her voice spiraling over the growing roar. "But I won't let it consume me." And just like that, the tension shifted. The shadows recoiled, their forms distorting in a whirlwind of despair. "No! This isn't how it ends!" they shrieked, their once unified presence fracturing into discord. One shadow managed to break free, lunging at her with a whisper that sliced through the air. You can't escape your history. You carry it with you. Maya felt the truth in those words, her family history, the struggles of those before her. In that instant, she understood the shadows more than she cared to admit. She had inherited their fight. She could either become like them, forever trapped in bitterness, or she could rise, carving out a legacy defined not by fear but by empowerment. With unwavering intensity, she swung her arm back, directing the glowing light to envelop herself. The energy wrapped around her, fortifying her spirit. I don't carry your pain, she declared firmly. I carry my legacy. My history is my strength. The darkness shuddered violently, the shadows morphing into disarray, their once organized forms unraveling. Laughter turned to howls of fury, gales clashing against the vibrant light. Maya! What are you doing? Jimmy shouted, his voice shards of panic breaking through the noise. I'm breaking the cycle. She answered, heat radiating from her as she focused on evolution instead of defeat. But even as she summoned energy from her newfound truth, she felt the weight of the shadows attempting to claw their way back, eager to reclaim their grip. They weren't done yet, and neither was she. The engine roared again, a tangible pulse that threatened to overwhelm her reality. Show me. Maya shouted above the noise, gripping the glowing object tightly. Show me what I must become. And then came a piercing scream, a voice she recognized, the voice of her father, echoing through the chaos, merging with the roar of the engine. Maya. Trust yourself. She turned, adrenaline surging as a cyclone of shadowy fragments surged around her. The choice loomed before her, a crossroad between light and dark. In that tumultuous moment, the ground trembled once more beneath her feet, vibrating with unresolved energy, and the shadows whispered their secrets slyly, yet desperately. Will you be our queen or our conqueror? Maya held her breath, a myriad of possibilities unfolding in her mind. What truth had been awakened, and could she harness it before it consumed her? The shadows closed in. Time was slipping away. Would she seize control, or would the darkness claim her once and for all? The energy radiating from Maya intensified, enveloping her like a cocoon of light. She stood firm, heart racing but steady, her eyes scanning the chaos around her. The shadows didn't just retreat, they thrashed against the illumination she wielded like a weapon. Desperation ignited within them, pooling together to form a menacing storm. Join us, Maya. They howled, their voices twisting into a sinister chorus. Embrace your darkness. You are one of us. She clenched her jaw, defiance coursing through her veins. No. I choose despair. I choose to rise. With each word, she focused the glowing object, its light surging brighter. The shadows began to whisper and hiss, their forms collapsing inward as if her words struck them like arrows. Maya, this isn't just a game. You don't understand. A shadow cried out, its voice echoing hauntingly. You think you can escape your fate? You're lying to yourself. The ground trembled violently beneath her feet, threatening to shake her resolve. Fear crept back in, clawing at her heart. What if they were right? What if her past was destined to drag her into darkness? Jimmy's frantic voice broke through the weight of despair. Maya. We believe in you. His eyes were wide, filled with hope and terror intertwined. It anchored her amid the chaos. Your legacy is your strength. Officer Harris echoed, his voice trembling but steadfast. Drawing strength from each shout, Maya raised the glowing object higher, feeling the warmth radiate through her as it pushed against the cold, clinging shadows. If I'll carry my history, then I'll rewrite it. All your pain ends here. A primal roar erupted from her lips, the glowing energy coiling around her in vibrant tendrils, shooting towards the shadows. With each pulse, visions exploded in her mind, a kaleidoscope of her family's fight, their struggles to break free from chains of generational sorrow. She wasn't simply a fighter, she was the culmination of their hopes and dreams. The shadows morphed, their furious shrieks blending into a chilling crescendo. Suddenly, a vision overtook her, flashes of her father working late into the night in a garage, wrench in hand, sweat and determination on his brow. "It's not where you start, but where you choose to go." His voice rang out, colliding with the darkness surrounding her. "Right." She gasped. "I refuse to let you define my road. I choose to drive it." Light exploded from her hands, blasting through the shadows with radiant force. Shapes splintered and dissipated before her, their angry whispers becoming desperate cries. "No! This can't be. We own you." But the grip of the shadows weakened, fraying at the seams. Maya could feel the weight of centuries being lifted, each heartbeat echoing the liberation of her lineage. Yet even as they unraveled, she noticed a lone shadow lingering, luring, seductive. It spoke softly, almost tenderly, its tone wrapping around her like a mist. "Maya," it coaxed, "you could lead us. We'd be unstoppable together." Maya felt the familiar pulse of temptation, its echo beckoning her to trust it. "Power and darkness are brothers," she whispered to herself, searching within for the strength to resist. "I am not you," she shouted back defiantly. "I am not just a vessel of shadows." With one final surge of energy, she aimed the glowing object straight at the last remaining specter. Light burst forth in a radiant wave, flushing away its palpable allure. But as her resolve hardened into a beam of defiance, the ground beneath her began to crack. Her heart pounded as fissures opened, splitting the area around her. Would this be her final act? Could she save herself and those she loved from the growing chasm of darkness? The shadows screeched, disintegrating, but their echoes lingered ominously in the air. "You will regret this choice, Maya. You're only delaying your fate." "I'll face my fate head-on," she cried, lunging back against the entropic pull of the shadows. With every ounce of strength, she pressed against the darkness, feeling herself being pulled toward uncertainty. "Trust yourself." Her father's voice resonated. Once more, guiding her through the fog of doubt as the world began to blur. Amidst the chaos, Maya struggled to keep her stance firm, her heart racing, her thoughts a whirlpool of fear and tenacity. In that reckoning, she understood, it wasn't just about fighting the shadows. It was about embracing the light within the darkness. As Maya dug deep, sacrificing her fears, the shadows writhed with fury, but in the thick of the chaos, something flickered. A new energy ignited, the taste of freedom tugged against the edges of her mind. The battle was far from over, and her pulse quickened with the thrill of the unknown, but was it too late to reclaim the true essence of who she was? Would her legacy guide her through, or would the shadows devour everything? Time slipped, and she felt the fabric of reality tighten around her. The moment was here, inevitable, as whispers from every shadow urged her to surrender. In that uncertainty, a new question emerged, primal and urgent: would she emerge an empowered warrior or succumb to the dark's seductive promise? The fissures beneath Maya swirled like angry snakes, snapping at her feet. Heart racing and breath quickening, she summoned every ounce of her connection to the light. The screaming shadows threatened to swallow her whole, but she wouldn't go down easily. "Not today." "Fight!" she gasped, despite the pressure closing in around her. "I will not bow to you." The energy from the glowing object pulsed with an intensity that surprised even her. It felt like a heartbeat, a rhythm thrumming in harmony with her own. She could see the shadows shaking, writhing like a lost child in a storm. Desperation filled the air as they clawed at the light, screaming, "You'll regret this." Suddenly, Officer Harris lunged forward, his voice breaking through the darkness. "Maya! Grab my hand." Instinct kicked in. Without thinking, she reached out, fingers brushing against his, and in that moment, an avalanche of warmth surged between them. The shadows hissed and recoiled, disagreeing with the unity blossoming in front of them. She could feel the combined strength, their hopes intertwining. But the ground shook violently, and Harris stumbled, nearly losing his grip. Gritting her teeth, Maya steadied him, the connection defining their power. Together. We won. Give in. As she commanded the light higher, it soared upwards, illuminating the churning darkness with such white-hot brilliance that it felt like dawn breaking through the longest night. The air buzzed with energy, and for the first time, the shadows hesitated. Yes. Jimmy shouted, his voice cracking with enthusiasm. Now, Maya. But just then, a huge shadow, darker and more massive than the rest, emerged from the chaos, towering toward the sky. It twisted and slithered, taking on a form that was almost human but with features that were grotesque, eyes glinting with malice. Fear spiked through Maya's heart. Join me, child, it rasped, voice like gravel. With me, you can have power beyond your imagination. Instinctively, she felt that same temptation rise. Power was seductive, promising a path paved with strength and authority. She could almost taste it. But the thought of losing herself, her family, her values pulled her back into reality. No, Maya finally replied, voice strong, I choose my path. With renewed determination, she raised the glowing object high. It began to absorb the darkness around it, the shadows writhing in panic as their legs began to dissolve into wisps of nothingness. She could feel the intense struggle, the energy battling within her to be unleashed. Maya. Harris gripped her shoulder tightly. You have to push hard. Don't let up. Sweat trickled down her face as she felt the surge of power again, her memories brighter than any fear. Images of her family flooded her mind, laughter echoing through the garage, late-night talks, and her father's wise words guiding her even now. They were with her, bringing her strength in this moment of strife. Then, an idea struck her: she could channel all that love and legacy into a new force. It wasn't just about fighting against the darkness, it was about embracing who she was, combining every piece of her story into a powerful weapon. Come forth, light! She screamed, focusing her heart and all she loved into the glowing object. It exploded like a supernova, blinding and breathtaking, swallowing the shadows in an embrace of purity and warmth. The room danced with brilliant colors, twisting and turning as the shadows fought to resist, but in that moment, she realized one last thing: the shadows were terrified. The terror coursed through their forms as they whirled into oblivion, their cries turning into chaotic echoes. They weren't just shadows, they were reflections of her fears, and now they were fading. But then, a chilling thought entered her mind. As she basked in the light, she felt uneasily aware of something deep inside. What if this wasn't the end? What if some power was still lurking, waiting to strike when her guard was down? Just as she contemplated this, a sharp pain surged through her palms, and the light flickered ominously. The shadows hissed. From the corners of her vision, faint yet persistent. Had she set them free in her moment of triumph? The warmth around her dimmed slightly, and she realized a new battle was brewing, one that wouldn't just test her strength, but her very soul. Would she uncover the truth once and for all, or would the shadows reclaim her at the very last moment? The questions hung heavy in the air, a storm gathering at the edge of her consciousness. How far had she truly come in illuminating her darkness? This was just the beginning. Maya's heart raced as the light pulsed with energy around her, shimmering like a beacon of hope in the chaos. The shadows writhed, but she stood firm, grounding herself in the love and legacy of her family. She wouldn't let the darkness claim her. Not again. Slowly, she took a step forward, pushing through the swirling fog with the glowing object clenched tightly in her hands. I will not be afraid. She shouted, her voice ringing louder than the uproar of discord. As the shadows shrieked and clawed at the edges of her existence, she drank in the warmth coursing through her veins, reminding her of the love she felt in her father's embrace, of the dreams they shared in the garage. A furious roar erupted from the towering shadow, its voice like the grinding of steel. You think you can defy us? You were born from us. The weight of history pressed against her, but she shook her head. That history didn't define her, she was carving a new path. Listen to me. Maya cried, summoning every ounce of strength. I carry my history, but I am not bound by it. I am more than a mere reflection of the shadows. As her words filled the air, a surge of determination erupted within her. The glowing object vibrated wildly, lighting up the landscape with a purity that cut through the hard darkness. She had no intention of letting the shadows consume her or take her power. With renewed courage, she aimed the object at the looming figure with all her might. I reject your darkness. With one explosive motion, she released the energy, light blasting outward in a magnificent display like the dawn breaking through the darkest night. In a shocking moment, the shadows froze. The masses strained against the blazing light, panic setting in as they realized their grip on her was slipping. No! We won't let you escape. The monstrous shadow howled, but Maya stood defiantly, basking in the brilliant glow. The crushing darkness collapsed, dissipating into wisps of smoke, the shadow's cries dimming to whispers. The weight pressing down on her shattered, her fears evaporating like forgotten dreams. She felt the rush of freedom, a rebirth in the light shining through her very soul. The crowd, once fearful, now carried a spark of hope. Faces brightened with awe, even Tom and Officer Harris stood tall upon witnessing this extraordinary transformation. As the last remnants of the storm swirled and vanished, a collective sigh escaped the onlookers. Jimmy stepped forward hesitantly, eyes glowing with admiration. You did it, Maya. You broke their chains. As the echoes of their sinister laughter faded into the night, a sense of calm enveloped Maya. She had faced the shadows, her own darkness, and emerged stronger. Her laughter mixed with the cool night air, delight bubbling up from deep within, satisfying her spirit. Let us end this cycle, Maya declared, now fully embracing her legacy. No more fear. No more shame. We'll create stories of strength together. She looked out into the faces of her neighbor, friends, and even skeptics. The whispers of doubt had been silenced, replaced by a bond born from the shared experience, but as she turned back towards the garage, something tugged at her heart. The glowing object still pulsed softly in her grasp. Deep within it, she sensed potential of vast energy yet untapped, holding truths waiting to be revealed. I will continue this journey, she promised, eyes alight with passion. For everyone who ever felt unseen, we will forge a new path. Gradually, she stepped back, allowing the grip of her past to loosen. The energy from the object enveloped her gently, a soothing balm cradling her spirit. She glanced at the garage and knew that this place, once the site of her doubts, would now become the birthplace of new dreams. And then, with a final spark of light, the glowing object settled, stilling in her hand. Maya smiled as she let it rest against her heart, knowing it would guide her in the days to come. Together, we're stronger, she said to the crowd, her voice rising like the sun. Let us keep this spark alive. Tonight, laughter would echo though. The streets, futures would intertwine, and the shadows, once something to fear, would serve as a reminder of strength and hope. The engine had roared to life once, and now it stood silent in triumph, waiting patiently for the next chapter to unfold, mystifying yet filled with promise. And so, they walked away from the darkness, stepping into the light, bound not just by fear, but by a sparkling legacy of resilience and empowerment. This was the moment. No more doubts. Just the beginning. Now that you've reached the conclusion of our wild ride, don't forget, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss any exclusive stories coming next. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference, and don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear from you. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second, let your voice be heard.